Coming to you live from the MediaPlex in downtown Windsor. This is a presentation of St. Clair College Journalism.
The polls are now closed in our region, and we're at the MediaPlex for the 2015 election. Hello and welcome to TV Cogeco's coverage of the 2015 election, live from St. Clair College's MediaPlex in downtown Windsor. I'm your host for this evening, Michael Hugel. Tonight, the crew here at the MediaPlex will be bringing you all the up-to-the-minute numbers on 4 ridings: Windsor West, Windsor-Tecumseh, Essex, and Chatham-Kent-Leamington. With me tonight will be our panel of politically savvy students who will be providing insight on the candidates and their platforms. Your panel mediator is Ashley Ann Mentley. Ashley?
Thanks, Michael. Tonight is one of, if not the most important night for our respective municipalities, regions, and our country in general. With me to break down the different platforms and candidates are Dan Gray.
Good evening.
Jonathan Hutton.
Hello.
And Brett Henderson.
Hi.
Let's begin. Gentlemen, what are some of the things we should be watching out for tonight? Dan, let's start with you.
I think one of the major things that we have to watch out for tonight is which way the GTA is going to go. With the polls now closed, last election, the Liberals gave up almost all of their seats to the Conservatives in the GTA area. It looks like there could be a very big switch in that area tonight, and if what happens there is going to make a large difference into the overall national picture. Another note we should be watching is where the cabinet leaders and some of the major members of cabinet end up. Joe Oliver is the federal finance minister, and if he doesn't happen to be re-elected tonight, it'll only be the 3rd time that has happened.
Jonathan?
Well, Ashley, if you're talking about provinces, Quebec is definitely going to be a battleground and a province to watch out for tonight. The province has 78 of the 338 seats, and it will definitely sway the results of this election. Currently, the NDP has 54 seats in Quebec, but like I said earlier, all seats are up for grab right now. Also, the youth vote is currently something we want to look out for, with around 26.4 million eligible voters here in Canada and some 3.6 million who voted in the advanced polls. It's definitely affecting this election.
And Brett?
I think Atlantic Canada is something we need to look at right this minute. The Liberals were forecasted to sweep this area in this election and currently hold 32 seats, all 32 seats, in the House of Commons. Secondly, British Columbia. There's been a lot of campaigning this election from all 3 of the major parties, and Justin Trudeau campaigned just yesterday in BC on what would have been his father's 96th birthday. It will be very exciting to see what will come of British Columbia this election.
It's interesting, Brett, that you mentioned British Columbia, because normally we see that as being split between Liberal and Conservative and NDP, but this year we have pretty much a 3-way split between the 3 major parties. So
We absolutely do.
It'll be interesting to see how it turns out. And Dan?
There was one of those things that you mentioned about there being 54 seats that the NDP had in Quebec and how they're up for grabs. I will agree with the fact that they are up for grabs, as is every seat in Canada right now. One of the big issues I've heard from a couple of local Muslim individuals is that the niqab has been getting a whole lot of play in Quebec, maybe a little more than other places, and that because the Liberals and the NDP support this and the Conservatives are against it, a lot of the vote is going to go towards the Conservatives. Could that possibly be an upset that you see coming up?
It could possibly be an upset. It's more of a provincial issue than it is a national issue. Whether or not that's going to sway the election too much, based on the current nanos index and the polls and everything that's been going on right now, I don't think it's going to sway voter turnout or voters' opinions too much, but that's definitely something to look out for later on.
Great. Well, next question would be, what issues matter most to our demographic, to the youth voters? And Dan, we'll start with you again.
I think one of the major issues that's been brought up since even well before the election has been the introduction of marijuana into the national election picture. It's something that's been a long time coming, but it's drove a lot of our youth vote to come out and take part in a democratic process. Whether that's a good or a bad thing, it really depends on who you ask, but the fact that we have youth out there and they're voting, whether it be just based on one issue or they became informed, is a very interesting and good thing for a democratic nation.
And Jonathan?
Well, definitely something for the youth to look out for is education. Each party has their own stance on education and the amount of funding that they'd like to funnel towards it. The Conservatives, for example, have pledged $45 million over 2 years for their enhanced registered education plans. The Liberals have pledged over $100 million over the next 2 years to increase secondary school support and their programs there. And the NDP has pledged that over the next 7 years, interest on federal student loans will be eliminated, and also the Canada Student Grant Program will receive over $250 million. So that's definitely something to watch out for.
Brett, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think jobs are a major concern for a lot of youth in this country, especially in Windsor. We currently have a very high unemployment rate. It's currently 13.2%. And a lot of local youth that I speak to say they're uncertain that they will have a job upon a successful graduation. So I think that's something that the majority government will have to look at in this election.
Now, Jonathan, it's interesting that you've mentioned both the youth vote and positions that the parties are taking on school. We know that the older voting population tends to normally vote one way, but now that we have the Liberal Party and the NDP, both the platforms that they're taking on education and the high numbers in the advanced polling of youth voters, it'll be really interesting to see how it turns out this evening.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
Dan, any thoughts on that?
I think, again, we're looking at education and we're looking at jobs, and that's a great thing, but those have always been issues for many years, that jobs and education have always been things that have bugged youth for many years. I think one of the main things, again, that is driving everything is marijuana, and I'm not sure that that's a good or a bad thing, but I guess that'll find out in the next little bit here.
We will find out. Thank you very much, gentlemen, and now we're going to hand it back to Michael.
Let's run through the ridings we're going to be covering tonight. First up is Windsor West, as we see the incumbent Brian Massey of the NDP. And the main competitors for him in this riding is Henry Lau of the Conservative Party and Dave Sundin of the Liberal Party. Next, in Windsor-Tecumseh, incumbent Joe Cole-Martin has retired, so in his place is Cheryl Hardcastle, the former deputy mayor of Tecumseh from 2011 to 2014, and she will be up against Joanne Gignac, Ward 6 council member in Windsor City Council, and Frank Schiller, newly appointed Liberal member. In Essex, we're going to see Jeff Watson, the incumbent, up against Audrey Festerica and Tracy Ramsey. And last but not least, Chatham-Kent-Leamington, David Van Kesteren of the Conservative Party and Van Kesteren Auto Sales will be up against Katie Olmsted of the Liberal Party and Tony Walsh of the NDP. Now let's look at the bigger picture. Early numbers have the Liberals up to a 44-seat seats in the House, as opposed to 1 in the NDP and 7 for the Conservative Party. And these are based out of early numbers coming from Atlantic Canada, as we see 45 seats now for the Liberals. So it's going to be interesting. Still not not the bigger picture, seeing as there's 338 seats to fill, but this is very telling at the moment. Now let me put this into perspective. In Canada, we are responsible for 20,000 polling places with 66,000 polling stations. Add in 6 time zones and 26.4 million eligible voters, and well, you have a recipe for a new parliamentary mix. Let's see how it all shapes up. We will be back live from the MediaPlex at 5 minutes to the top of the hour, and in the meantime, we will be rolling through the results of the 4 ridings in our area. We will also be on social media tonight. Follow us on Twitter at the MediaPlex, _MediaPlex, and on Facebook, MediaPlex Canada. We will be back at 5 to 10. Thank you.
Coming to you live from the MediaPlex in downtown Windsor, this is a presentation of St. Clair College Journalism.
Welcome back to MediaPlex Election 2015. After just 4 hours since the voting polls closed in the Maritimes, the Liberals are projected to win the 2015 federal election according to both CTV and CBC. Let's run through the federal numbers. As we see right here, 100 seats for the Liberal Party thus far, and out of 338 seats, yeah, you can definitely see that they're on pace to claim at least a minority government to this point. We still don't know whether or not they will take the majority. A lot of voting still to be done. Let's go to Windsor West. And Brian Massey, the incumbent, is out to a lead already over Henry Lau and Dave Sundin. Not really a far stretch. Brian Massey has been the incumbent since 2002 when first elected to the House of Commons. He's also the first New Democrat elected federally to represent Windsor West. And next we have Windsor-Tecumseh. Cheryl Hardcastle, the successor to Joe Comartin of the NDP, and it looks like she is getting the Comartin supporters as well, but not far behind her are both Joanne Gignac and Frank Schiller, who are both deadlocked at 45. Now we're going to move on to Essex, where Audrey Festriga is out to an early lead, 32 votes, 20 for Tracy Ramsey of the NDP, and only 26 for incumbent Jeff Watson. Again, these are small sample sizes, a lot of voting still to be done, but as of right now, it looks like the NDP and Liberal parties are in control thus far in the Windsor-Essex region. And now time for Chatham-Kent-Leamington. We're a lot of numbers in right here, but after an early scare from Liberal Katie Olmsted, Conservative and incumbent David Van Kesteren is out to the lead by 65 votes. And now we're going to throw it to Ashley Ann Mentley and the panel.
Thank you, Mike. Well, gentlemen, we see the numbers that are up there, and we've got the win called by CTV and CBC, both saying that it's going to be a Liberal win. What does this mean for us? Dan, we'll start with you.
I'm not looking really locally right now. I'm not even really looking nationally. One of the big things that has surprised me to this point is how Atlantic Canada fell. 12 seats to the Conservatives is what the last election brought for Atlantic Canada. Right now, they walk away out of there with none. The NDP had 6 seats, and they look like they're going to walk out of Atlantic Canada with none, too. It doesn't take much to realize, guys, that this is if this falls as a trend going across the country, that Liberal take up, the previous polls that put them maybe getting a minority might actually show them getting a majority.
Absolutely seems to be a trend the way we're moving from the Maritimes into the Quebec numbers. So, Jonathan, what do you think about these numbers?
Yeah, speaking of the Quebec numbers, like I said earlier, Quebec is crucial to the election process, and it looks like the Liberals have totally recaptured Quebec for the most part from the NDP, with a majority of the NDP seats falling to the Liberals. Currently, there are 118 confirmed seats that the Liberals do have, well on their way to a possible majority government. That's not confirmed yet. That is still a possibility, though. It looks like this could turn into 1993 all over again, where the Liberals dominated the polls and became a majority.
And Brett, what are your thoughts on the numbers?
Well, I think the numbers are staggering. I think we're seeing a very big influx in Liberals. As you said, a Liberal win has been called. I think the reason for that Liberal spike would be the young vote. I think the marijuana issue, going back to it, really grabbed the attention of a lot of young voters, and I think that's really contributing towards the Liberals' success.
Absolutely. Now, why don't we take a second and talk about what it is that each party promised us. Jonathan, we'll start with you.
Well, the Liberal Party has promised to start off their economic program with an actual $10 billion deficit for the country, and they've committed $225 million over the next 2 years towards the CBC, towards their public broadcasting programs there. And talking about jobs earlier, especially for the youth, the Liberal Job Strategy has committed $570 million towards youth job creations. But one of the major priorities on the Liberals' political agenda was creating infrastructure, and they had to pull out some numbers to get to that. And so far, they've committed over $2.5 billion, not million, but $1 billion towards infrastructure, trying to repair Canada, getting it back on its feet again, and trying to dump in more money to create more jobs.
Dan, what are your thoughts on this?
I'm looking at those numbers and dumping money into the Liberals and possibly putting us, and they've said they're going to put us in a bit of a deficit in order to create jobs. The Conservatives have said that they're going to do 1.3 million net new jobs by 2020. They really haven't said how they're going to do it, but that is one of those promises that they have made. Another promise they did make was to provide a $1 billion package to help the auto industry. Even though this Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP that they've negotiated, sounds like it might do a little damage down here, they have offered to help out.
And Brett, what do we get from you?
Well, I think the TPP really affects Windsorites locally. Being a border city, it's gonna really affect us. One thing that I'd like to touch on would be the Liberals' national transportation strategy. They say that traffic delays in Canada result in a loss of over $5 billion a year. So this new strategy would be to basically clean that all up, really help the government save money, help Canadians save money on traffic delays, municipally, locally, and in Canada.
Great. And Dan, you have another thought on this?
Well, we know jobs has been an issue. We brought it up when we first started that jobs was an issue, and this is going to be something that portrays over the next 4 or 5 years of what looks now like it might be a Liberal win. We don't know whether it's minority or majority. I guess it's going to come down to how they follow through with what they've promised, with how they plan on going ahead and doing the things they've said they're going to do. There is some stuff that needs to be figured out now that we have a Liberal projection, and I guess that's going to happen in the next little while.
Great. Well, I guess we'll find out soon, right? And we're going to head back to Michael now.
Thank you, Ashley, and thank you, guys. Yeah, it looks like we're going to run through the federal numbers to begin with, but only about 41 more seats until they get that 170-seat majority government. This is what we're seeing right now. Liberal, NDP, Conservative. It's not as tight of a race as many people thought. Now let's go to some local numbers as well now. As we see Brian Massey out to a commanding lead with 547 votes to this point. Again, you don't want to call it right away, but I can see that Brian Massey, the MP, is certainly on his way to another victory. In Windsor-Tecumseh, we see Cheryl Hardcastle, again, another new Democrat who is out to another commanding lead. Cheryl Hardcastle, she was also a member of the Essex-Windsor Solid Waste Authority Board and the Essex Region Conservation Authority Board. So she has definitely gotten her name out there, both as deputy mayor and and in many cases in the Windsor-Essex region. So it seems like the people in Windsor and Tecumseh are really taking a liking to her and as Joe Comartin's successor. In Essex, we see, again, a smaller sample size, but with that, Jeff Watson, the incumbent, has regained sole possession, 59 votes to Audrey Festerica's 55. Tracy Ramsey not out of it quite yet, only 37 votes, but, she's still got a shot. In Chatham, Kent, Leamington, 600 votes for David Van Kesteren, 561 for Katie Olmstead, Tony Walsh, 444. And we're going to go back to the federal numbers just for 1 second to see how just how the Liberal government is running away with this right now. 129 votes, or 129 seats, NDP with 18, and the Conservative government with 83. Two really kind of neat things about this election is that we have two of the oldest sitting council members who are running in their respective ridings, with Brian Massey since 2002 and Joanne Geniak since 2003. Little fun fact for you folks at home, the hit Billboard song in 2003 when Joanne Geniak took the Ward 6 was Into Club by 50 Cent, and the Oscar for Best Picture went to Chicago, starring Richard Gere. So a little bit of history as times are changing. So will we. We will be back live from the MediaPlex at 10:25, and in the meantime, we will be rolling through the results of the 4 ridings in our area. Again, we will also be on social media tonight. Follow us on Twitter @_the MediaPlex and on Facebook @the MediaPlex Canada. Stay with us.
Coming to you live from the MediaPlex in downtown Windsor, this is a presentation of St. Clair College Journalism.
Welcome back to the MediaPlex's coverage of the 2015 election. Again, as stated by both CTV and the CBC, it looks like Trudeau is in fact ready to run our government. Let's run through the updated numbers. Right now, we see the Liberals out to 179 seats in the House. Only 42 have been confirmed. The Conservatives, 97, and the New Democratic Party, 21 seats in the House of Commons. In Windsor West, it seems as the incumbent Brian Massey has been re-elected to represent Windsor West. That's no surprise. He's been declared by the CBC and CTV. As broken by our MediaPlex correspondent Sean Preble, the CBC and CTV are reporting that Cheryl Hardcastle again has been elected to represent Windsor-Tecumseh as a member of the New Democratic Party. So different incumbent, same party. In Essex, it was a tight race. Tracy Ramsey now has jumped out in front of Jeff Watson and Audrey Festerica. So the NDP holding strong right now in the Windsor-Essex region. Jeff Watson not over yet, only down by close to 500 votes, and voting is still early. Chatham-Kent, David Van Kesteren is in the lead right now with 3,476 votes. Next is Katie Olmsted. So Conservative versus Liberal battle in Chatham-Kent-Leamington. And we're going to throw it now to Ashley Ann Mentley and the panel for more news.
Thanks, Mike. Well, gentlemen, we see the numbers that are in. It looks like we're going to be having a Liberal government. Now, I know one hot topic with that was military defense. So, Jonathan, why don't you start us off with that one and tell us what that's going to mean?
Well, military defense for Canada, according to the Liberals, is going to be mainly focused on veterans and veterans' benefits. What this means for the Canadian Armed Forces is that the Liberals have committed $400 million to the government for Canada's armed forces, most of that going towards veterans. They're going to commit $160 million towards Veteran Affairs Centers and reopen 9 Veteran Affairs Centers at a cost of $14 million as well. Also, $200 million is going strictly towards veterans and their families, and Trudeau is also planning to pull our armed forces out of Syria. Also, we're all about to figure out whether or not the Trudeau government will support the F-35 Lightning program that's been very controversial lately, as well as Canada's Surface Combatant Vessel program. Now, whether or not Canada will get new warships or new fighter jets, that's to be determined, but it is crucial to Canada's defense. What a lot of people don't realize is things have been ramping up with Russia lately. There's been a lot of Russian fighter jet intercepts since January of this year, and even a recent flyby against HMCS Toronto. The ship was buzzed by Russian fighter jets. So things are really heating up between Canada and Russia, and with them being our neighbors and the continuing confrontations, our military is needed more than ever.
Dan, what can you tell us about this topic?
The Liberal government has pretty much promised that they're going to scrap the F-35 program. And that means for the Canadian industry, right now it's not going to cost us anything to get out of the program because we haven't planned to purchase any of the F-35s. We're still in that process of how many we want, if we want any. But Lockheed Martin has made some minor agreements with Canadian aerospace agencies that are worth about $630 million to those in about 30 different companies in and about our aerospace industry. If we get out of the program, it is a very good chance that Lockheed Martin will pull those from our Canadian companies too. Those planes, our planes that we have right now, our CF-18s that are currently serving over Syria, are also being told they may be pulled back and brought back home, and that we will only do sanctioned NATO and UN missions. On that note, for Syria, Brett?
Yeah, over to the Syrian refugee crisis. The Liberals have promised to spend $100 million towards the Syrian refugees. And then they promised to bring 25,000 of them to Canada this year, while the NDP would spend $64 million and the Conservative government would spend more time slowing the process of the intake of refugees. So my question to you guys is that spending enough? Do you think $100 million would be enough for those refugees? Do you think 25,000 is enough to bring into Canada?
Well, that also goes down to the support for the refugees. We're talking about 25,000 people here just coming into our country. And we got to look at the support structure for these people as well. Do they already have families here in Canada? Is all the $100 million going strictly towards them and they're receiving no outside help? I highly doubt that. But you also got to think about how they're going to support themselves here as well. Windsor has a very high unemployment rate. Are they going to be located in Windsor where we barely have any jobs? Are we going to be located to, somewhere in Quebec? We don't know. We don't know what the Liberal government has in plan for those refugees. All we know is that they're planning to bring them here to Canada. Will they be put, in temporary camps until they're able to find a home or a stable job? We're not sure of that. So we'll have to look to Trudeau and his government for that in the upcoming months.
Dan?
We are the fourth most multicultural city in Canada. We have a whole whack of different ethnicities and stuff that are here. Syrians are looking at coming and rejoining some of their family members and doing other things when they come to our country. What that's really going to mean is the Conservatives have had an issue with security and things that are going to be regarded to security with bringing this many people in. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens now that it looks like the Liberals are going to be in charge.
Now, interesting, Jonathan mentioned what it's going to mean in Windsor, right, with the unemployment rate that we have. But if we look a little bit more broad, what will a Liberal government mean for Windsor in general? Dan, we'll start with you again.
A Liberal government in general to Windsor doesn't look like we're going to be represented right now in Windsor. With the way that it's going and our polls that Mike is giving us over there, it looks like there's going to be NDP down here and a Liberal government in Ottawa. That's going to be a disconnect. There's going to be a disconnect between our representatives and the people that are actually there making the calls.
What does that mean, Jonathan, when it comes to Parliament and our representatives?
Well, our representatives unfortunately won't have much of a voice when it comes to this. We're not the official. The NDP is not the official opposition anymore. Therefore, the NDP will have certain days where they will be able to propose their bills to Parliament, but obviously not as many days as the majority Liberals or the Conservative. CTV has just declared that there will be a majority government for the Liberal Party, so that'll be interesting to see how they treat the NDP and whether or not and how that affects Windsor, Essex County.
Brett, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, going off what my fellow panelists just said, will Massey's voice really be heard in the House of Commons? I think with a Liberal majority and with our area just being NDP, the real question is, are his strategies going to be left behind? Will he be heard? That's the real question here.
All right, and our next question would be, now that we know it's a majority government, what's going to happen with Stephen Harper and Mulcair? Are they going to resign? Are they going to keep their positions? What do we know about that? Dan?
There is out on social media right now, there is some speculation that both of those will happen, but we'll get to that at our next break here in about 25 minutes.
All right, thank you very much. And we're going to head back to Michael now.
So as it breaks, Justin Trudeau will win a majority government as predicted by the CTV. So here's the federal election numbers. 181 non-confirmed seats. However, CTV still predicting the majority government. We will be back live from the MediaPlex at 10:55. And in the meantime, we will be rolling through the results, but let's take a look at Windsor West right now before we get to our boards. Brian Massey, again, as reported by the CBC, Brian Massey will win Windsor West region. Switching over now to Windsor-Tecumseh, Cheryl Hardcastle has definitely succeeded and is the new Joe Coe-Martin at the NDP party, as she is reported by our correspondent Sean Preble and the CBC that she will win Windsor-Tecumseh. And now on to Essex, as Tracy Ramsey of the NDP is now leading by just over 1,500 votes over incumbent Jeff Watson of the Conservative Party and Audrey Festerica of the Liberal Party. And back to the federal numbers now. Again, 181 seats for the Liberals, the Conservatives 98 seats, the NDP 26. It surely has been a whirlwind of emotions, not only in this MediaPlex but across the country. We got a closer score right now with the Blue Jays than we do with the Liberals and the Conservatives. But you know what? It's time to take a quick break. Keep up with us on social media throughout our coverage. Follow us on Twitter at @the_MediaPlex and on Facebook at MediaPlex Canada. Stay with us as we run through these boards.
Coming to you live from the MediaPlex in downtown Windsor, this is a presentation of St. Clair College Journalism.
Welcome back. As the big news from Ottawa, Stephen Harper, Prime Minister since 2006, has been overthrown by a Trudeau government. And folks, do not adjust your TV sets. This is not 1968. Let's look at the federal boards. Liberal Party has 185 seats. Only 106 of those have been confirmed by the CBC. The Conservative Party, 105, followed by the NDP with 34. Not many people could have predicted this. Let's take a look at what's going on in Windsor, Essex. Windsor West, 10,000 votes for Brian Massey, the incumbent. He will take the Windsor West riding yet again. That's been confirmed by the CBC. As well in Windsor-Tecumseh, we're going to see Cheryl Hardcastle, and she has been confirmed also by the CBC. The incumbent of last year, Joe Comartin, has retired. Cheryl Hardcastle, same party, different incumbent, so look for another orange crush in Windsor-Tecumseh. Tracy Ramsey has just been confirmed by the CBC to take the Essex riding. That's from our correspondent here at the MediaPlex, Rhiannon Lotz. And again, in Essex, Tracy Ramsey, NDP in Essex. And as we see here, David Van Kesteren of Van Kesteren Auto Sales, the incumbent, is still holding strong in Chatham, Kent, Leamington. So he may be the only Conservative leader in the Windsor-Essex County, Chatham, Kent, Leamington region. And we are going to throw it to Ashley Ann Menley and the panel for some further updates.
Thank you, Mike. Now, just before the break, we were talking about the leaders of the other parties, Harper and Mulcair. What's going to happen now that they haven't won? Are they going to resign? Sorry. Dan, we'll start with you.
I think if you're Stephen Harper tonight and you're looking at these numbers, and this was not predicted, I don't think in their war room they would have thought this was the even possible to walk out of this thing with a Liberal majority. He's had a minority. He's had 2 consecutive majorities, and now he's down to not having really any power except for being the official opposition. I don't see him surviving this. Whether he resigns tonight, there's speculation on Twitter that he may, in his resignation speech to giving over the election to Justin Trudeau, resign tonight. But I don't think his leadership lasts in the Conservative Party past this election. What do you think, guys?
Jonathan?
Well, I'd have to agree with you on that one. I pretty much think Prime Minister Harper's days are numbered. But we'll move over to the NDP and Thomas Montclair. If you look at the number of seats that the NDP had in 2011, that's 109. It's dropped down to 32. Now, that's not confirmed yet. It won't be confirmed till the end of the election. But as it stands right now, 68% of NDP seats have been lost. Now, whether it was due to the Jack Layton factor or not, that remains to be determined. But the NDP definitely took a beating in this election, and they're going to have to recover from their wounds later on.
Brett, thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think as far as the party leader, Tom Mulcair, he had a very positive energy throughout his entire campaign, and I'm sure that will continue in the future of this political party. So it's really just up to him and his party to see what will really happen to that party and his leadership with the NDP.
What I want to think about too is with the NDP and Thomas Montclair is if he's going to survive this election or not. In the event that Montclair does step down from office, what is the possibility of Brian Massey becoming the head of the NDP? That's something that we'd want to look out for in the upcoming months as well.
It's absolutely something to keep an eye on. Now, we know we have a majority Liberal government, but we've seen the results that Mike showed us. We have no Liberal representatives here in Windsor. It's almost entirely NDP. So now, not only do we not have representatives federally, but we also don't have representatives provincially. What is this going to mean for Windsor? Dan?
I think when we look at the numbers and we see that we look like we're going all orange, which means Jeff Watson has been not reelected in Essex County. With having a completely red and a completely Liberal government in a majority factor, the opposition days in Ottawa are 22. The rest of the opposition is given via percentage of vote. What they get for days is decided by the Parliament. It looks like right now with the percentage of vote that the NDP has gotten, they're going to get about 6 days to be opposition in every Parliament year. That's 6 days for our NDP locally to bring up issues that might matter to Windsor. For the rest of it, we just might not see anything.
Jonathan?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Dan on that one. Like I said earlier, the NDP took quite a beating this election, losing 68% of their seats. Now, what this means too for the government as well is we were looking at a federal government that's Liberal and a provincial government that's Liberal. So that includes things like Veterans Affairs funding coming from them, health care, child care, and even school board funding and teacher contracts and negotiations. All of that is under Liberal control now. The NDP has no say in that, especially when it comes to Brian Massey and the recent election issues and with the school board and the contract issues with Kathleen Wynne. That's all controlled by the Liberal government. The NDP has no say in that.
Brett, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think, agreeing with these guys, the numbers don't lie. I think it's going to be tough for us to really have a voice with a Liberal majority, with less of an NDP government. So we're just really going to have to see how this plays out.
All right, great. Thanks, guys. And we're going to hand it back to Michael now.
Thank you very much, Ashley, and thank you, guys. I have a special guest with me, Miranda Underwood of the St. Clair College Student Representative Council. And Miranda, thank you so much for coming by the MediaPlex. Not many people could have predicted this.
Thank you, Mike, for having me. I have to say this was my prediction, but it was a lucky one at best. But I'm excited to know I won my office pool, so we're pretty excited.
Now, what does this mean for the SRC at St. Clair College? You've told us that you really want to do a lot more work with Brian Massey, who had just won out of the Windsor West region. So what does this mean for St. Clair College and the SRC?
So we were really privileged. Brian was on campus for our debate, so it's nice to know that that's someone that I've gotten to meet. So we're hoping to build on that relationship. Hopefully we don't have too much of a struggle with none of the NDP being a part of a majority government with the Liberals. But I am glad to know that I have one step in a relationship with Brian, so we want to build on that. And we're hoping for good things in Windsor West.
Now, anything that you can maybe break that you would be willing to kind of work out with Brian Massey, and maybe even in the Windsor-Tecumseh region with Cheryl Hardcastle?
We're going to have to see what our students want us to do. We're always soliciting feedback, so let us know. But I just want to continue to work on a relationship and get that first and then go from there.
Now, any kind of similarities between this this vote and maybe the vote of the SRC, maybe the way you came into presidency?
I don't know so much so as locally, but we've definitely been advocating for a youth vote across the country, not just myself, but other student leaders. And I think tonight's election results are the face of students wanting change. I'm hoping to see that the youth vote is increased a lot. I think that's really been echoed in the results. So we'll see, I guess.
All right, let's look at the federal numbers now. As we see the Liberal government still holding strong, as they will, as with the majority government with 185 seats. The Conservatives, 104 seats in the government. The NDP with 37. So it looks like, well, not it looks like, it's been reported the Liberal government will take power. Justin Trudeau, sorry Windsor Essex, we're not sorry if you voted for the Liberal Party, but he will be ready and he is fit to run the government. Also taking a look now at what we have on a local basis. We got to go to Windsor West right now. Again, just quickly, Brian Massey, the incumbent, taking Windsor West. Gonna move on to Windsor Tecumseh. Cheryl Hardcastle again, NDP, the Orange Crush in Windsor. And now David Van Kesteren still holding strong, Conservative in Chatham-Kent Leamington. And Tracy Ramsey has been confirmed. NDP will win the Essex riding. Back to Ashley Ann at the panel.
Thanks, Mike. Well, we're coming to a close of our evening here. We've had a lot of interesting results tonight, and we're going to go back to our panel for a quick last final thoughts from you guys. So we'll start with Dan.
It's been a heck of a night. It's not the way that I thought it was going to go, not the way a lot of polls are going to go. Locally, we have an auto sector and other things that are going to be affected by a TPP deal that we'll have to see how it goes in the morning and we'll see what's said.
Jonathan?
Well, I think nobody was expecting the full Liberal majority government, but fun fact for you guys, if this does hold up with 185 seats for the Liberal government, they will have more seats than Jean Chrétien did back in the 1999 election with 1993 election with 177 seats.
Brett?
Yeah, it's been a very exciting night, very exciting election, campaigning, very exciting. I think the outcomes were stunning, and it's going to be very exciting in the morning to see what happens.
All right, thank you. And back to you, Mike.
Well, there you have it, folks. A Liberal majority is the way our country will run for the next 4 years. Windsor, Essex, the country has spoken and believe Justin Trudeau is in fact ready to run for the country. For everyone here at the MediaPlex, inside the booth, here on the floor, thank you very much for watching. We will be back next time.